Hey, what's going on, everyone? I'm astrologer Eric Rosen, and I'm going to be your train conductor of the cosmos for February 19th through February 25th. This is my Wednesday edition where I cover my favorite transits of the weekly astrology. It is called Celestial Conversations from Chaos to Clarity. And boy, do we need it, because we are knee deep, maybe balls deep for some of us, or privacy deep, the genital region. It is Moon in Scorpio as I'm recording this, so I can say that. In this Pisces energy of, wanting a rest and digest mode, but also having us figure some things out. So we're going to be getting into that. But before we do, if you want to get your hands on an ebook that teaches you what the placements are in your natal chart, what it means in the different zodiac signs, what it means in the different house system, you can click on that link down below to get your copy of that ebook. It's like somewhere between 80 and 100 pages. Doesn't go into the sacred geometric aspects in astrology. That would be way too specific. That would be more, if you wanted the astrology reading, the creme de la creme, you want to look at a chart reading with yours truly and find out what are the transits that you're going through. How's it hitting home? How do you navigate, whether it's just this next month of 2025, the next few months, the rest of 2025, where are things headed? That would be an astrology reading. Click on that link down below if you want to get your hands on that. So I'm excited. I'm even more excited to do this horoscope probably than I was the last one when I had the beach in the San Diego Bay, well, not Bay Area, but San Diego area, a little bit north of there last week. I am home now. I'm back in St. Louis, Missouri, but I am excited to share this one because there's so much spiritual opportunities for what I would call cosmic shifting in terms of our subconscious consciousness, like reprogramming, releasing, the purging, all the stuff that's coming out, just like there's all this exposure and things coming out in the media about those little Pisces white lies of like, where was the money really going? Where were the taxpayer dollars like really going? This can be symbolic of us like purging a lot of like just like little programming in ourselves as well, in our personal lives, and even the groups of people that we connect with, and our friends and our family, where it's like we don't necessarily have to believe in these darker shades of reality, of negative belief systems, of that life is hard, where we can actually start to become more of a cosmic creator and manifester. Like, this astrology is really looking at the past and the future are working together. It's like that part of you that's grieving, letting go of the past, just the past is coming up. It could be past lives coming up, but that future self as well that wants you to step into your best expression of your worth, to actually have that beautiful dream. It's like they're working together. And it's like the more that we can release right now, the more that we can get some good rest, dream, journal, manifestation rituals, right? That these come up consistently in almost every reading that I do, to actually believe again fully in that North Star of like, it's not just about some idea like some people are putting out of like America's back again or something like that. It's where can your soul like come back and express itself, and getting past any of the old hardships. And it's like with each passing day that goes by, even though this is some pretty slow moving astrology, it's like we can get clear and tell the universe what it is that we want, and actually start to receive that, and not have to stress and chase it and try to make ends meet. And I do want to say that I know there's people out there and groups of people that are having a hard time with these changes and the struggles, but I just want to say it's more than just the stuff on the outside. There is a cosmic influence with all this mutable energy, which just signifies like change in the astrology, right? All the Pisces energy that we're really focused on is asking for a shift. It's asking for a release. It's asking for, what is it that we need to like get done with on a deep subconscious level, and dealing with our irrational fears of things going to shit in life or collectively, and actually get into this more like, oh, you know what? Like, I actually think it's going to be okay. But it's it's going to be okay, because that deep soul level spiritual work, doing the meditations, right? Like doing the free write journaling, um, going to see the shaman if you need help on the healing front. Like this is a time where if you're struggling like with your mental health right now, things are feeling like crazy, get support, or if there's pieces that you feel like you've been just trying to shove off on the back burner and it's just getting louder and louder in your face in terms of something that you need to heal, just face it, just deal with it. It's actually not going to be as bad as you think. This can actually be a really beautiful time for healing, surrender, receiving support from others, supporting others too. Like if you're feeling, strong and steadfast and like you're on those front lines, so to speak. Now, I will say, watch out for sabotaging egoic behaviors, like frustration of like wanting to take an action to get something that you really want or desire, whether that's a relationship, a money situation, a project situation. All the most beautiful things are just gonna slip through the cracks right now, probably right after we've purged some fears or like some past energy and just like dealt with how we're feeling. This is a week to not be afraid of the emotional fluctuations and things. We started with the moon rounding out the end of Scorpio, and then it goes into Sag and Capricorn. So it's about following this emotional trail of the exploration of whatever it is that's in front of us, that's on a deep spiritual level. And, we don't need to like check out completely. I know we could be like super tired like during this time. This is that last full week of Mars retrograde. And then when you also have Venus in its shadow period about to retrograde here on March 1st in Aries, it can feel like more sluggish than ever. Like it can feel like just this deep level of depletion of like can't go on or don't really want to get out of bed with that Mars in Cancer that's going to be wrapping up on the 23rd. And then for those first couple of days, it's also with all this Pisces, not about hitting the snooze button and sleeping in too long, because maybe some of that tension in the head of the muscles that Mars retrogrades can bring up is finally subsided, but then like not wanting to like take action immediately. It's very slow integration. It can be a really beautiful time to really be intuitively aware and go, wow, there's a lot of deep changes in our identity that are being asked of us like during this Mars retrograde cycle that we've had, that I think in a lot of ways is preparing us for this new initiation that's going to start this year. Mars being the ruler of Aries, where Saturn, Neptune is going to meet. I don't think it's any mistake that we're getting these retrogrades of these personal planets, the masculine, feminine with Mars, and then Venus to kind of get right on a more interpersonal level with our own inner masculine and feminine energies, but also with the opposite, genders too. And of course, I know there's a lot of people like struggling like right now with the administration and like their recognition around like different, genders and pronouns and stuff like that. But remember that that would fall more into the category of Uranus, which is like the more unique expression of things where it doesn't fit the norm. It's not like the masculine Mars or Venus, the feminine. And the fact that Uranus is at the end of Taurus and Saturn is starting to make aspects there, it's like we can find compassion like for these different expressions of unique personal value systems. Like we don't need to like look at the media to jail us into like some feel-good story of how it's all supposed to look. I think the idea here is that when you own your personal integrity of your value systems, you do your healing work, you follow your intuition, you become more of a creator, a manifester like of your own reality. And it's not about a victimhood expectation of the world to be a certain way so, that there can feel a sense of like security. This is about being your own hero. This is about being your own superhero, like in that way, and finding your own divine connection for your own unique expression of spirit. And the best part of it is if it's actually aligned as a soul level higher self expression that's a valuable expression of you that's going to be on your best timeline, it's going to work out. But This is where it's also making sure like that we're all, and I'm not just like talking about gender stuff, but it's like that we're not just like pulling from like a catalog expression, like of things too, of like trying to find the security and the stability to fit in with like certain groups of people, whether that be a political party, a way of expressing the self. This is more so about deep individual, like what is it between you and creator energy of like what you're creating in your life, and then being that compassionate, empathetic person for yourself, for your past and where you're going, but also for others too. To what's really been coming up lately is this like live and let live energy. There's really no need for the conflict right now, other than at this point with all this Pisces energy, it's like an addiction. It becomes like an addiction to hype instead of like more of like the gentle divine excitement of like working with your angels and spirit guides for the reality that you're creating. I think this is a really, really good time to start to massage out the edges of the places where subconsciously we still rely on our old methods of success. And for most people, that's relying heavily on the mind, learning a bunch of different information, running to media, like basically all these like outside sources to inform us about the quality of our reality, where it's like we can start to switch track to something that's more intrinsic, a success blueprint, like mastering our own personal human design, which by the way, I do those readings too. So I'll put that link down below for those one-on-one sessions. But it's about this cosmic shifting into getting out of the programming so you can be this more unique expression like of yourself. And this really is that time to not struggle and to like let go more. And actually when you let go, that's where more of the spiritual essence of things like flow in. It's a really dark time for people that just like want their precious, they want that ring, that Smeagol ring. They want those desires, just like feeling like restless and just like have to have something be a certain way. Pluto and Aquarius will just continue for these next couple of decades, bring up the ways of people that are resistant to the changes and the innovations in the world, those that are just going to adapt to the new piece, and then those that are like leading the charge. And for all intents and purposes, it does seem like, and this, I say this not to get political, but it's like, it does bring up people like Elon Musk and Doge. It's like that is an innovative forerunner of things. It's a group that's going in and exposing, things that some people don't want exposed. And we could argue all day long about, is it ethical or good, or the access, or can you be trusted, and all this stuff. And it's like, that's the hard part about Pluto and Aquarius is that you kind of almost have to rely on your own spidey sense of things, of like, can you actually trust a group of people? And then if you're not getting a yes or a no, then it kind of becomes a wait and see what happens, and then accepting that if it's not a charge either way, that even if it feels like it affects you, you don't technically have a dog in the fight, and to not get overwhelmed into those complexities in the world. That's what Pluto will do, is this, feels like it's like pulling your power and your soul to like into some just too much complexity, trying to figure out too many things, too many problems in the world, and then honestly just being afraid of like what intuitively this natural solution would probably be in the circumstance like this, would probably be on a personal level, following our human design to go, it's like, are you responding to that inner authority that human design shows us, where it's like, do you even need to be engaged with this? Because that's what helps keeps us on track too, with like all this like media information. It's like we could easily just become an endless consumer, and the excitement and like trying to find like that next level dopamine hit, and like breaking through the plateau of like dopamine resistance and just the stimulus of things, to where if it's the mind just leading it and the subconscious just like searching for the high-low excitement of it all, instead of like, wait, do I even need to be in this space? Because remember, Pisces is boundless. It's like you can go anywhere you want in the universe and accidentally astral project your energy, or just get involved with some information or some media thing, or even a conversation with a person, and it's like wait, like does it even feel right to be there? And then it's like, if you follow that response, that inner authority, and then there's like conflict, well then at least there's a lesson there, and then you can just rely on that inner authority to like navigate that conflict, or at least follow some higher level spiritual intuition, right? Because there's no one way to do it. It's not just human design. It can just be whatever feels like just the divine energy flowing down through those upper chakras and through the crown and into the just the being of like knowing what that holy truth is for us as individuals. And so, you know, you can apply this to so many things, you know, like a work situation, a schedule situation, a situation with like diet and health. Like, it's best for it to come from a more intuitive place right now. And I don't think that there's any shortage of spiritual opportunities for us to transcend some really old limitations, really old limiting beliefs. I think it is a time of curiosity, and, you know, if we're feeling adrift, because it can be easy to feel adrift, you know, to kind of like snooze a little bit and get lost in the mind, or, you know, to create like heroes and villains like in the mind, and have to kind of go, well, you know, how much of this was subconsciously programmed of that we're always in opposition or in conflict with something. And so Pisces like teaches us that it's not so much like a peace that befalls things, it's more so just like a divine acceptance that all things must come to a close, and release and surrender is a beautiful way to allow closures to happen in our lives, with that North Node in Pisces and that South Node in Virgo. That is a huge significant factor of the astrology. It's not about trying to piece all the data and the details and the information together, because we can really create some really, you know, awesome things like during this time. But it's also not, it's not a rush. It's not like some gold rush. We don't need to have FOMO. It's really just more so about the biggest essence of Pisces. It is going with the flow. It's a cliche in a way, but it is letting that divine spiritual nature like rule the roost. And so you'll see people that don't have like a higher spiritual belief that actually feels like it's truly liberating them and taking them to a positive future timeline and belief system, and actually having more of a motivational can-do attitude about whatever the circumstances are, whether it's personal or more on the world front or country front, that those will be the people that struggle, you know. But for those that know that divine source is there, to simplify this astrology in its most basic essence is to just, it's there. And so if you slip and you go into the ego, you get triggered, or you start chasing something, or you fall into worry, victimhood, self-sabotage, addictive patterns, it's like, as long as you know that that divine source is there, and then you can always connect back to that, well, it really does become just as simple as just letting it in and just receiving it, and seeing that the fight at this point is more of like just the resistance to shifting into a new paradigm that we're all heading into, where we don't have to be separate in that egoic self and that spiritual higher soul level self of ours, that there are opportunities that the energy just shifts. It becomes magnetic. It becomes, you know, the things that you want and you dream about, it becomes boundless for those opportunities. It becomes timeless, like where it's like, it's going to manifest. Doesn't matter when it's going to show up. And, I just want to say for the people watching that it's like, it can sound very candid putting it this way. And, but with all the Pisces, it is about still having compassion and empathy. It's about, but it's also not about hiding our light and our magic. And actually, it's the simultaneous piece where it can be boundless. It can be all of it, where it's like you can have compassion and empathy for others and where they're at and their belief systems, and even our own resistances to change, or to really fully letting go and letting God in. But ultimately, it is that accepting the invitation that the magic is in the seat of the human soul, and that moves mountains. It breaks down a lot of limitations that we've been facing for a very long time. And so it does teach us, really, if you're just a good person and you're not lying and not like fibbing about those portrayals, or putting it out on social media in a certain way, or putting, it out to the world in just like any way, shape, or form, and actually like owning those pieces and actually illuminating the cracks. Like, this is where we smooth out our soul. And so it's not about going to one extreme, of pushing ourselves to the brink of what would be like self-destruction, where the ego is just like leading us in a really weird direction that's not divine, nor is it just being sleepy and kind of lost in wonderland too. I think that there is this really big middle ground that we're all faced with, where we take the intuitive, divisive actions, but they're probably going to come after this big release that I mentioned, that can feel very healing, and maybe can feel overwhelming, or having to let go, and sudden realizations of like, wow, it's all, my life is changing, I'm changing, the world is changing. It's like, yeah, no duh, but it's not, let's not create some consensus belief system, that we're gonna, jerk each other off, jerk each other's chains, and be like agreeing with everyone, like, oh, it's all going good, or oh, it's all going bad, and be okay with that person that's done the deep enough spiritual work to just sit in the moment and be like, here's what I know from like where I'm, my standpoint. And it's not so much of like a charged mental outlook as it is of like based upon the spiritual experience, because you want to talk about people having like way different experiences like right now that are all over the board of how they see the world, and trying to get people to agree on the same way of seeing it. Like, good luck. But that's where we got to watch for putting on the rose-colored glasses, like just for like the feel-good vibes of people, and to just be okay, and as they say, call a spade, and just accept that sometimes we do got to call out negative BS, like this spiritual war, you could call it. It's not like it's over. I mean, I think the trumpets are starting to call, for those that are ready for this change, where really like what the ultimate shift, disclosure, crazy change I think is like a person's ability to truly like walk out of the matrix, and to be that creator, and to find other people that want to create too. Like, we're heading into that like unknown, uncharted territory, where we're starting to prepare that script, like a we the people, type of thing. And even more so than and maybe just as much as it comes from our voices of what we're saying, is like the frequency in our hearts of like what we're attuned to that holds that light of change, whether it's like wanting less fortunate people to get their crack and get their opportunities, or those that have been working really hard to like finally have their breakthrough, those that have been controlling and manipulating the masses to get, basically you could say, relegated. It's like I've been watching the show Ted Lasso, and they talk about getting relegated, like when your team just sucks and you get demoted to a lesser league where it's a demotion. And I think that's part of it, and that's some of what we're already seeing anyway, whether people agree with it or not, even just with this new administration with Trump. So I think that it's okay for us to do that in our own lives, like too, where it's not about necessarily sabotaging relationships with people, but to use part of this week too for a deep intuitive discernment around our money project relationship situations, to see what maybe spirit is asking us to relegate and demote. And doesn't mean sabotage, doesn't mean cut it off for good, but in this boundless Pisces nature, it's nice to have Saturn there, to be honest. It's nice to have the North Node there, because at least whenever we focus and we're in integrity and we're disciplined with that magical piece that we want to experience in this big, boundless, holographic reality, it's like it can show up with not a lot of resistance, especially dealing with any victim of consciousness is a huge one, right? Dealing with the past, lower vibrations, guilt, shame. Ask me how I know about these things, right? It's like to walk this shamanic path. And I think that's the biggest, part of this, like too, is anyone who got swept up so badly or still in those like programs that it doesn't have at least one shamanic vertebrae in the backbone of existing, of accepting, hey, life is life. There's going to be lows, there's going to be highs, but it's like, if you bring a spiritual, etheric, but also connection to the earth, you bring that into your being and accept that like there's a guiding source like within all of us it's always going to be okay. Like at a minimum, it's always going to be okay. And so knowing it's going to be okay, it's like you're playing with house money spiritually of what you're creating in this life, to where you can like bet it on yourself. It's like investing in yourself, investing in your interpretation of this reality and your true desires of like what you really want to see in this. And so I think that ironically, the same transits that have probably been pissing people off the most, like the Mars retrograde, this Venus shadow, all this Pisces energy, like it's also the most beautiful stuff, because it's cleaning up wounded past and ego issues that needed to be relegated in order for us to actually step more into what is that true divine expression of self. It's like some of us are shamans, some of us are wizards and healers, and just this is about fuck the labels. And people are gonna start to get to a point, especially by the spring, where unfortunately there's gonna be groups of people bitching so hard and so many just like weird wounded issues. No one's gonna have time really to sit around and like fucking do a witch trial for the spiritual people. Like that's over. So, bottom line is like, for those of us that have that dream and are willing to own the spiritual expression and be bold in that way, and like break the fucking old reality rules, like a Neo and a Trinity, like those are the ones that are going to excel during this time. So it's not your grandma's, your mom's, the secret movie, like cookie cutter version of manifestation. Like it's the ultimate form of energy work and manipulation. And when I say manipulation, I mean alchemy. I mean that you can't just shut your eyes and pretend it all to go away and wish for what you want and not deal with, the grief, to not deal with the emotions, to not deal with that you're the co-creator of it, and that when you align that ego piece with the soul like piece of it, that it becomes so much easier. So in terms of this week of shifting from chaos to clarity, it's actually accepting that in a really weird way, this can be a week where the chaos can be out there, and then the chaos within can just be accepted as it's self-induced. Like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of our own worry, and that the clarity comes from going deeper into spiritual practices that allow us to reconnect to a sense of spirit and surrender to like let that wounded ego that has its wants like move the F out of the way, and then things like become clear in that moment. But it's not going to be clear here. South Node in Virgo with Mercury at fall in Pisces with all this Pisces, I'm sorry, but the mind is like the last resort. Like the mind at this point would be your go-to if you're just like in a dangerous situation. You just gotta like MacGyver your way out of something. And even that's still a little bit Pluto and Aquarius, where it's like all of a sudden just things click into place and you figure out a complex situation. So it's still even like the spirit, the soul level of self, like that inner motivation to survive with Pluto. And doing this work for this many years, I can tell you that I discovered like really early on, like the path forward of the magic wasn't going to come from a logical place. If anything, it's about the logic is accepting that there are certain laws spiritually that govern this universe, that if we like follow those and not the logic and the rules of what was imposed and overlaid onto the psyche, is logically actually going to lead to our actions actually being in alignment with the complex mathematical quantum formula of how this universe like operates, and the mystery and the unfolding of like where it's all heading. But we have astrology to show us, okay, here's how people are probably going to react. It's probably going to be a lot of people struggling during this time, not going to lie. A lot of people feeling like they're losing it, or, especially mentally, or this can bring up the folks in victimhood that, they'll find a Chicken Little thing, sky is falling in some area of life, like no matter what, like there's something wrong. But then there's those people that are going, there's just something not quite right about this. So whether you're figuring that out now or you figured that out a long time ago, it's like you walk that Jedi path to where you're like, okay, well, this is a mess, because it's like we got to get out of this entangled spider webs with all sorts of programming, all the way from political to social to religious to relationships, money, all these different things, in order to get to a space of where we're actually in its most simplest form. It's like it boils down to the more that you can actually focus and hold the vision of what it is that you want, and notice that that's where the healing and the shadow work is at. When your mind drifts to what you don't want and the fears, that's where the healing is at. So that's what I mean by it's like the past and the future working together. The steps forward is like, the more you release the past and like let go of that dense weight, it gets easier to take those steps forward. So I'll pull a card for this week. I haven't been doing that, but I'll do for this week. Pop those questions down into the comments if anyone has any questions about this week's astrology. Of course, if it's anything personal to, your astrology, your natal chart, that would be reserved for a reading. So just to be fair to everyone. Crazy week, but it can be beautiful. Well, didn't see that coming, but that's Pisces. It is the 8 of Cups, and so I think this is where, watch out for the patterns. Like, don't get trapped into that, let me just give it like another go and try to find the emotional fulfillment and nostalgia of the past, so that pattern, that behavior, that could be a relationship, it could be anything. It's like, but what is that thing that, that you've been trying to do, especially the method, the approach, or to the situation, or just the situation? It's like, we all know, like, we know what's like toxic and not toxic. And it's like the easiest way to deal with those addictive patterns and behaviors is connecting with the divine feminine. There's plenty of divine feminine spiritual energies. Connect with them on a daily basis. I like Freya because she's, part of that badass Viking clan, but I like Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene for more of the Christian mythology. But some people get down with Kuan Yin and Pele and, Isis and the Egyptians and the Hathors. It's really just something that allows like the divine feminine, gentle, empathetic, bigger picture, less egoic, masculine way of being the doer, where it's like this card, it's like he doesn't know what to do with himself. Like he doesn't know where the fuck he's going. It's like, well, I think I should walk away from this situation, but doesn't have a clue where he's going. And it's always harder to walk away from something when you don't know where you're going. And so that's where I think the divine feminine energy can like help us with some of the gentle deconditioning for the vision of our lives of like where we are going. And the funny thing is it can be simple. The last card is the Judgment card. Mars is coming out of retrograde this week. Yes, Venus is going retrograde, but with all this Pisces energy, like, this isn't about some human piece of doing 1,000 things a day with that South Node in Virgo, but it is about waking up your fucking soul and letting your spirit soar and seeing that like the playing field just gets so much clearer and you see so much more, and the understanding of like where things can head. The playing field, it's like Neo going from seeing green code to like the orange fucking shit. Like he sees the divinity in all of it. He knows what to head towards. So if you guys want to get some help, either through your natal chart, click on that link down below for the ebook, or click on the link down below to book your own astrology reading. And I'll see you next week.